Millions without power, extensive damage and flooding, and the politics of emergency management. It's the day after Milton. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Navigating the issues that matter to you. It's Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Milton is passing, and now the cleanup begins. Hurricane Milton tore through Florida last night and this morning, bringing powerful winds and rains and flooding to much of the state. It made landfall along the Gulf Coast as a Category 3 storm. It then weakened to Category 1 as it crossed the state. Power outages are widespread and deaths have been reported. But Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said, as bad as things are, they could have been worse.
The storm did weaken before landfall, and the storm surge, as initially reported, has not been as significant overall as what was observed for Hurricane Helene. Right now, it looks like Sarasota County had the most significant storm surge, likely somewhere between 8 to 10 feet. And remember, with Helene, we had 15 to 20 feet up in Taylor County. Rescue missions have been underway throughout the night. State search and rescue teams report at least 48 individuals have been rescued as of 0630. National Guard search and rescue teams have worked overnight and successfully executed rescues of families and pets on the West Coast and from the destruction of the tornadoes in the central and eastern parts of Florida. The Guard continues to work into the morning and have 31 rescue aircraft operational and hundreds of rescuers engaged in over 125 active missions in 26 different counties.
One of the hard-hit areas is Pasco County. It has a population of about 500,000 people. They live in the suburbs of Tampa and St. Petersburg. Downed trees and power lines scatter the landscape there. There have been hundreds of calls about debris blocking roads. The roof of Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg has been ripped to shreds. That's where the Tampa Bay Rays of Major League Baseball play. The Tampa airport is reporting minimal damage. It expects to reopen tomorrow. Kevin Guthrie is the executive director for the Florida Division of Emergency Management. He says the plan now is to search, secure, and stabilize. And he pleaded with people to not become disaster tourists.
In the first 72 hours after a storm, there is a parallel effort to search, secure, and stabilize the area. As search and rescue missions continue in response to Milton, please do not go out and visit the impacted areas. You will be inhibiting first responders by doing so. Right now, we need those roadways clear for electrical crews, fire crews, EMS crews, urban search and rescue crews. We have 20-something urban search and rescue teams that will move into the area and do a door-by-door search. Even though, as you heard the governor say, this was not the worst-case scenario, we still had damage. And we're going to need to get out there and go door to door and make sure that everyone is okay. So please stay off the road. Listen to your local authorities for updates on when it is safe to go outside and when it is safe for you to return to your homes. I know a lot of people evacuated, and we appreciate that. Do not be in a hurry. Check in with your local emergency management agency, your local sheriff's offices, to see if they are posting anything on if it's safe to return home. Please make sure you do that.
The storm made landfall at a place called Siesta Key, Florida. At 8:30 Eastern time last night, it packed wind speeds of 120 miles per hour, more than 200 kilometers per hour. It is expected to continue traveling mostly eastward today and enter the Atlantic Ocean late tonight. Governor DeSantis said more than 3 million homes are without power.
There are currently 3.1 million accounts without power. There have been 635,000 restorations since Hurricane Milton hit Florida. The areas that have the most significant outages as of this morning are Hillsborough, 75% out, Hardy, 97% out, Manatee, 82% out, Pinellas, 68% out, and Sarasota, 75% out. Of course, there are 50,000 plus linemen that have been pre-staged. A lot of what they'll do this morning is likely assess the damage and then begin restoration operations very quickly. And we appreciate everybody that's in that fight because that's very important for a lot of people.
This is the second hurricane to hit parts of Florida recently. It comes not long after Hurricane Helene, and it comes just a little more than 3 weeks before the U.S. presidential election day, November 5th, and there is a political battle underway about FEMA. That's the Federal Emergency Management Agency. The agency says it's fighting a misinformation campaign with false claims spreading on social media, such as anyone who accepts aid from FEMA could have their land seized. There are accusations those claims are being fueled by Donald Trump and his supporters. This was Donald Trump at one of his recent rallies in Michigan.
People are dying in North Carolina. They're dying all over those 5-6 states. They're dying, and they're getting no help from our federal government because they have no money, because their money's been spent on people that should not be in our country. They stole the FEMA money just like they stole it from a bank so they could give it to their illegal immigrants that they want to have vote for them this season.
During CNN's hurricane coverage yesterday, the Democratic presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, called into the news network, slammed Trump for what she called dangerous claims.
Well, I'll tell you, I have spoken with local officials who have been struck, for example, by Hurricane Helene, and they are doing an extraordinary job in trying to combat the misinformation. And I'm talking about sheriffs, I'm talking about mayors, I'm talking about local officials. I don't even know their party affiliation, by the way, but leaders on the ground who know that it is not in the best interest of the people living in those areas to not know their rights, not to know what they're entitled to, and to be afraid of seeking help. It is dangerous. It is unconscionable, frankly, that anyone who would consider themselves a leader would mislead desperate people to the point that those desperate people would not receive the aid to which they are entitled. And that's why I call it dangerous. And we all know it's dangerous. And gamesmanship has to stop. At some point, the politics have to end, especially in a moment of crisis. And the crises that we've been seeing affect so many people. I've met people who have lost family members through Hurricane Helene. We know the desperation and the fear that the folks who are attempting to evacuate Florida are experiencing. The last thing that they deserve is to have a so-called leader make them more afraid than they already are.
The White House said today Florida Governor Ron DeSantis spoke with U.S. President Joe Biden. The top FEMA administrator will join DeSantis in surveying the damage throughout the day and then brief U.S. President Joe Biden on the results. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Well, I think like many people, I was glued to a lot of the television coverage yesterday of Hurricane Milton as it moved across Florida. And I think this storm is going to be remembered for a few things, David. First of all, the crazy tornadoes yesterday across Florida is just very frightening. More than 100 tornado warnings across the state yesterday. I think about that NBC News weatherman from one of the local NBC news stations in Florida tearing up as he was reporting on how strong this hurricane was becoming as it was churning in the Gulf of Mexico. And then yesterday, flicking through the channels, Anderson Cooper getting hit in the face by flying debris. Yeah. My God, it's dangerous out there for these reporters out in a storm like that. And of course, the adventures of Lieutenant Dan.
Yes.
What happened to that guy, Lieutenant Dan?
I got kind of consumed by the Lieutenant Dan story after the show yesterday, Rob. So today we can confirm, based on the American news reporting, that the Florida man known as Lieutenant Dan has survived Hurricane Milton. To remind people, Lieutenant Dan is a man with one leg living on a 20-foot sailboat in Tampa Bay. His real name is Joseph Malinowski. The internet nicknamed him Lieutenant Dan after the character in the movie Forrest Gump because he only has one leg and he lives on a sailboat. So Lieutenant Dan went viral in the days leading up to Hurricane Milton after telling a local TikToker that he would be riding out the storm on his sailboat because God told him to.
God told me to come out here and get a boat. I came out here and got a boat. And everything that he's been telling me over the last 2 days is I'm doing the right thing. He's got my back. I'm in good shape. I ain't sweating it. We're going to rent this one out. We got set up the way we know what we're doing. And as long as the water just keeps rising, we'll be fine.
Will you be wearing a life jacket?
Hell no.
Are you going to be able to swim if it need be?
In circles.
Can you swim with one leg or what?
Yeah, I can float like a damn champ. But swimming, I just go in circles.
So the plan's just to stick it out here?
Yeah. I mean, the water's going to come in, it's going to rise. If you're on land, it's going to flood, you're risking drowning. I'm in a boat. The boat goes up with the water. So even if the boat goes up 100 feet in the air, I'm going to be up 100 feet in the air with the water. So it's really the safest place in the world to be is on my boat.
So that was a couple days ago. Yesterday, as the storm approached Tampa, Lieutenant Dan kept popping up in the news coverage. The mayor of Tampa at one point claimed in a press conference that they had convinced Dan to abandon ship and head to a public shelter for the storm. But later on in the evening, the TikToker went back to the pier and he found Dan was still there, battening down his hatches.
All right, it's 9 o'clock. We got 3 hours until high tide. And we're checking in on Lieutenant Dan. His boat has risen a little. Dan! Lieutenant Dan! Are you in there? There he is! Dan! We need an interview! There he is! There's our guy! Yup, look at him! Yay! How we doing? Give the people an update.
So far, so good. We're staying on this side of the pole, but it's actually still low tide. If you can believe that.
He says it's still low tide when it's in 3 hours high tide, but his boat is on the concrete. What do you guys say to people?
So that was at 8 p.m. Eastern. At 11 p.m., a reporter for the local Fox News affiliate, Kevin O'Donnell, found Dan alive and well in the midst of the storm, still in his boat.
Hey, how you doing?
How you doing? How's the ride?
The water's gone.
Yeah, it's going out into the water. It's going out, being pulled out.
Yeah. It's safe. You can see right there.
How are you doing? No problem. Was it as bad as you thought?
No. Is the water coming back in or still going out?
It's going out. All right, you hang in there.
All right, you guys be safe. Talk to you tomorrow.
You too.
Later on in the night, the original TikToker who started this whole thing off, he goes by the name Tampa Terrence on TikTok. He posted on his account that Lieutenant Dan had survived the storm and he had joined him on a live stream on a platform called Kick with a streamer named Aiden Ross, who has a huge following in the United States.
Dan is still alive, guys. We're on Kick right now streaming. We got Aiden Ross, Lieutenant Dan.
Yes. Hey, Lieutenant Dan.
Oh, everybody get on. Dan is alive and he's buzzing.
This is where the story gets really crazy, Rob. So The very latest update I have for you. Apparently, Lieutenant Dan, his viral fame has gotten enough attention that this big-time streamer, Aiden Ross, has been able to land him some kind of streaming deal with the platform Kick, and that's not all.
We were able to come up. I'm going to be able to pay for a boat for you. We're going to get you a nice boat in the range of $50,000 to $100,000. And we're going to get you a full-time Kick deal, which is a live streaming deal where you can stream your entire voyages and all your adventures. And you could have a passive income come in. And you're going to be, you're going to have a Kick deal, man, a live streaming deal. So you could live stream and connect with fans all over the world, and they could really see your adventure, man.
Wow. Thank you.
It's going to be insane.
I mean that from, I don't know what else to say other than thank you. And bless you all.
How about that?
That is something else.
A happy ending for Lieutenant Dan. Again, so Aiden Ross has over 1 million followers on just that platform. He's a very influential streamer. So if that deal comes through the way that he outlined it there, I mean, that's a pretty incredible story, I think.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. Well, good for him. I was worried about him. Lieutenant Dan, still think he's a bit crazy for doing that, but I'm glad at least it ended well. I'm Rob Snow, here with David Smith. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Well, we have still a very busy show ahead for you. Of course, we'll do Talkback. That's coming up. The final 2 hours of our program today is always Talkback. And today's theme, heating and eating, David. Heating and eating.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So it's getting chilly. Have you turned your furnace on yet?
Yes, I can report. I am combusting natural gas to heat my home.
Oh, naughty boy.
Don't really have any other choice. So,
yeah, I put some. I've had a few fires in the wood stove already. Don't usually do that before Thanksgiving, but hey, kind of chilly in these parts, especially this week. We've had this brisk north wind, and it's really cooled everything off. Although it is supposed to start warming up, at least in this part of the country, coming up. So heating. I want to talk about heat pumps. Heat pumps.
Yeah.
You know, the government really wants you to buy a heat pump.
Oh,
David.
All the rage.
I mean, to the point of like they're almost giving us things away when you tally the rebates. The rebates for heat pumps are more generous than they are for electric cars.
Yeah, they are.
For crying out loud.
Yeah.
Your parents installed a heat pump, didn't they?
Did. Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
They were on
how's that going for them?
Oh, they love it. They love it. They were on an oil furnace, like an old school oil furnace before now. It came to the end of its life, so they did the, I guess, environmentally conscious thing, took advantage of that rebate, and they love it. It's super quiet. The air conditioning works great, but this is their first winter with it, so I can't say how well it heats, but the AC part works.
Right. So, you know, I've been thinking about it. So here in Quebec, Quebec kind of does its own thing. The rebate, the total rebate you could get, depending on the unit you buy, it's up to $7,600.
Wow.
For a heat pump,
yeah.
Right? So, I mean, it's so much money, you can't help but at least make inquiries about it. I know nothing about heat pumps, but I know lots of listeners, I'm sure, have investigated heat pumps or have installed heat pumps or, you know, got an estimate and said, thanks, but no thanks. Don't think it's for me. Whatever. Just tell us about heat pumps, your experiences. So that's heating. Then eating. Well, Thanksgiving is coming, right? Thanksgiving is coming. And a lot of people are worried about grocery prices. It's been all over the news. Sky high prices for food insecurity, long lineups at food banks, all of this kind of stuff. I want to focus in particular because food is political these days in Ottawa because of supply management, and the Bloc's demand that they protect supply management from any free trade negotiations. So supply management only involves certain food items, dairy products, chicken, eggs, and turkey. I mean, is it this system, supply management, been around since the 60s. It has a lot of proponents and it has many, many critics. So we're going to ask you about that, food prices and supply management. It's time to get rid of that. Coming up after the news, we do expect to connect with the leader of the Conservative Party, the leader of the official opposition, Pierre Poilievre, who is in the GTA today. He's coming up. This is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
With a special guest today, Canada's leader of the official opposition and the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Pierre Poilievre, is on the line. And it's great to have you back. Great to hear from you.
Thanks for having me, Rob. I appreciate it.
You are now calling on the government to designate two groups as terrorist organizations in Canada, Samidoun and the Houthis of Yemen. Why?
Let's start with Samidoun's. It is a front organization for the People's Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which itself has been banned as a terrorist group for now 2 decades. This organization, the Samidoun, then operates in Canada in order to get around that. And what have they been doing using that loophole? They have done these anti-Semitic uprisings outside of Jewish hospitals, homes, businesses. Just a few days ago on October 7th, they celebrated the genocidal attack on Israel on Canadian streets by burning our flag and tearing it to shreds. They have coordinated with the terrorist dictatorship in Iran, including having their leader travel to Tehran to do interviews on state media and meetings with top terror regime officials. So they are clearly a terrorist group. By the way, they've been banned in Germany. They've been kicked out of the European Union. So it's time to ban them in Canada, to put end to the terror that they're raining in our streets and the anti-Semitism that they're fomenting, which has led to the fire bombings of synagogues, schools being shot at. This chaos needs to end. We need to ban Samadou. And the second group is the Houthis. They're the Iranian-backed group that controls about a third of Yemen and has been firing missiles at civilians and at merchant ships in the Gulf for months now. The Americans banned the Houthis back in January, but they're still legal. They can still raise funds, coordinate, and operate on Canadian soil. I'm saying ban the Houthis, ban the Samadoun, ban the terrorists, bring home safety.
Okay. The federal government did list Iran's IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, but how long did that take? 6 years? Something like that?
Well, 9 years after Trudeau came into power, but more importantly, 4 years after the group murdered 55 Canadian citizens by firing an unprovoked missile at a commercial passenger aircraft and killing these innocent people on flight flight 752. You'd think that a country would immediately ban a terrorist group after it murdered 55 of its citizens, but it took Trudeau 4 years and a lot of conservative pressure. My worry, though, Rob, is that now there'll be these front groups, these proxy groups that will pop up and claim, well, we're not IRGC, we're some other group, but they're really the same thing, and that's one of the reasons why I want to ban Samadoun and the Houthis, because they are just, both of them, just front groups for the terror regime in Iran.
Okay. I want to ask you about a few other things. I want to ask you about some data that was released today by Statistics Canada. It's about income inequality. And it says income inequality increased in the second quarter of this year as the gap in the share of disposable income between households in the top 40% and the bottom 40% of the income distribution reached 47 percentage points. And StatsCan says that is the largest gap ever recorded since the agency first began collecting this data, which was back in 1999. So 25 years ago. And StatsCan says it's because of the interest rate environment. Look, the interest rate environment is actually good if you have an investment account at a brokerage firm or something like that, and you're a higher income individual. You have savings and you're earning interest. It's been good for those people, but it's been bad for just about everybody else. The lower 40% who have had to experience higher interest rates or taking out a car loan or paying off credit card debt, whatever the case might be. What could be done about that? How do you address income inequality like that?
First of all, let's acknowledge that after 9 years of Trudeau and the NDP Liberals, everything costs more. Work doesn't pay. Housing costs have doubled. And the irony is that all this big government spending and programs, we were told we're going to reduce income inequality, take from some to give to the others. In fact, exactly the opposite. Here's why. Inflation is always great for billionaires and terrible for the working class. Why? Billionaires protect their wealth by buying gold watches and fine wines and art pieces, and stocks, and other things, real estate, other things that go up with or even faster than inflation. Whereas the working poor, they can't protect themselves against inflation. They just lose purchasing power, and they take a real wage cut. So when governments print money and cause inflation, as Trudeau and the NDP have done, they take from the have-nots and they give to the have-yachts. So what can we do about it? We need to cap government spending, cut government waste, get rid of money printing, stop abusing our currency. Instead, our central bank should get back to the job of low inflation and sound money. Second, we need to get rid of the carbon tax, which hits the lowest income hardest because, of course, they spend the largest share of their income on food and fuel that the tax raises. And the third is we need to incentivize municipalities to speed up permits, free up land, and cut development taxes to build homes so that people can afford a place to live again like they could eight or 9 years ago. So axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, stop the inflation.
Okay, I want to, as a follow-up question, okay, the Bloc Québécois wants to increase OAS payments for seniors by 10% starting at age 65. Now, that would cost $16 billion a year over 5 years. Now, it has been argued by many experts that many of these seniors, they don't need that money. They're living in houses that are paid off. Some of them are earning six figures. OAS is not means tested to any great degree. It starts getting clawed back at a certain level, but you're going to raise something, maybe raise the payments of the guaranteed income supplement, which is specifically targeted at low-income seniors. And yet your party, which, you know, you just said you want to cap government spending, you want to fix the budget. Why would you vote for a measure that would cost $16 billion over 5 years?
To signal that we think seniors deserve more purchasing power after 9 years of Trudeau doubling housing costs, giving us the worst food price inflation in 40 years, driving up food prices 36% faster in Canada than they did in the United States. A lot of seniors can't afford to eat, heat, and house themselves. Now, is the Bloc solution to that problem the best one? I think there might be better ones. For example, what if we were to axe the carbon tax and lower income tax for seniors? That way they would spend less on heat, on gas, on groceries, and they'd keep more of their pension and their savings income free from income tax. So that might be the better way to do it. And I think when you see our election platform, it'll involve axing carbon taxes, lowering income taxes so that seniors, workers, families, all Canadians pay less and bring home more.
All right. This minority government is not, it's not getting much done because all the business in the House of Commons is halted because of your demands, which are, I will say, supported by the other opposition parties. Demands that the government, the Liberals, turn over all the documents related to SDTC, the so-called Green Slush Fund, and you want to give those documents to the RCMP. The Liberals say that could cause problems, could even violate charter rights. It's been more than a week of nothingness in the House of Commons because your party is sticking to this. Why are you sticking to this?
It's a $400 million scandal. The Auditor General found that Liberal appointed Green Slush Fund gave millions of tax dollars to their own companies in what was 180 conflicts of interest. The chair of the fund has been found guilty of breaking conflict laws. We still don't know where all the money went. We haven't got any of it back. And the RCMP is being blocked from actually doing a full investigation because many of the documents are in the possession of the government, which Trudeau refuses to authorize handing over. So we're simply saying give the police all the evidence so that they can complete the investigation, get us back our money, charge the criminals, and let Parliament get back to work.
All right. Look, it's great to hear from you today. I wish you and your family a happy Thanksgiving, Pierre Poilievre. Thank you for the time.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving to you, Rob. Let's bring it home.
Yeah. Bye-bye. That is the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Leader of the official opposition, that's Pierre Poilievre. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
You have questions
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers
on News Radio.
Well, it's always good to catch up with Pierre Poilievre, someone I've been interviewing for the better part of 20 years. Too bad about his phone quality. I don't know what it is, David. Whenever we interview somebody from Toronto, the phone quality is always terrible.
Yeah.
When the guests are on a cell phone from Toronto. I don't know if it's the big towers of Toronto or what it is, but my gosh, just terrible phone quality. That's too bad.
Maybe we need a public inquiry on the quality of cell phones in the GTA. It is the center of the business community, after all.
But you know what? I mean, this is like a marathon thing that is happening in the House of Commons.
It's pretty wild. It's
because
crazy.
This is a question of privilege. That means that nothing can happen in the House. No bills can advance in the House until this whole matter is dealt with, and either the Liberals comply or and supply these documents, or this could go on until the Liberals try to convince the other parties to move what's called a closure motion. But the thing is, because it's a minority government, they would need the support of other parties to pass a closure motion. And the New Democrats and the Liberals, the New Democrats and the Bloc are willing to let the Liberals just kind of twist in the wind on this. They are talking about this right now in the House of Commons. I'm watching the House of Commons here. I think Charlie Angus is speaking right now, the Northern Ontario New Democrat.
Failed? And I think the Green Fund scandal, Mr. Speaker, to me is particularly a powerful metaphor. Because I remember when the Prime Minister went to COP26 with his Haida tattoo and said, Canada's back. And he made legally binding commitments on the global stage to move Canada to becoming a leader in the fight against climate change. And what have we seen since then? This Green Slush Fund is the perfect example of money that wasn't sent out the door to actually do what was promised. That money was sent again and again to oil and gas. In fact, that we see that 3 times as much money goes out under this government to help the oil and gas sector than on clean energy as our planet burns. And the fact that under this Prime Minister...
Okay. Well, the Green Slush Fund is not really about money being sent to oil and gas. It's the fact that people who are on the board and in charge of directing the funds, this is basically a venture capital fund, investing in early stage green technologies. People on the board had all kinds of conflicts of interest, like 180 conflicts of interest, something like that, David? They were directing funds into companies in which they had personal stakes and could financially benefit from. So bad the chair resigned in disgrace. So bad that the government wound the whole thing down and kind of put whatever's left of it into the National Research Council.
Yeah, it doesn't even exist. They killed it.
Yeah, that's the Green Slush Fund that the Conservatives have brought all business in the House to a standstill over, because they continue to demand that these documents be released to the House, and then the House would turn them over to the RCMP. This has been going on for, I think it's 9 days now. No end in sight. And the NDP and the Bloc also think the Liberals should hand over the documents, but the Liberals can always count on one ally, at least in the House, the Green Party leader, Elizabeth May.
It's being blown up in a way that makes me uncomfortable in Parliament. And it also, of course, I think, again, if the House of Commons asks for documents, the government should absolutely turn over all the documents. There are ways to handle this that are other than grinding Parliament to a halt. Sending the whole thing to committee now would certainly be helpful. We could shine quite a lot of light on this controversy with existing documents, with the Auditor General's existing reports, and what we know about what transpired.
So in addition to this issue, the Green Slush Fund that has paralyzed Parliament, the Liberals are also finding themselves squaring off against a Canadian music legend now. Bryan Adams, he is back on social media slamming the Liberals again for what he calls the streaming tax. So this all has to do with the Online Streaming Act. And under the Online Streaming Act, foreign streaming companies like Spotify, for example, have to contribute 5% of their annual Canadian revenues to a fund that would help produce Canadian content. And Bryan Adams, he has a lot of problems with the Online Streaming Act.
The Canadian government's new music streaming tax is going to cost you more to listen to the music you love. A while back, the Minister of Heritage said she wanted to engage with Canadian artists about this new tax. Well, that never happened. And as of September, the government has slipped this new tax through. Want to know where your tax dollars are going? I'll tell you. It's going to prop up outdated broadcast models such as CanCon, which were originally built to help Canadian creators. And CanCon needs to change, not to be propped up. The way it's set up now, if a Canadian artist wants to work with a non-Canadian, then their work is no longer recognized as Canadian, and therefore radio stations are less likely to play it in Canada. How does this help Canadian artists, particularly emerging ones?
So the members of the press gallery cornered the heritage minister on this. Like, what do you think about what Bryan Adams is saying on a social media account? And Pascale St-Onge is the heritage minister, and she says Bryan Adams is wrong.
But to be quite frank, the system that the Canadian government is putting in place is mostly for emerging artists and for our local artists in Canada. And if you talk to them, they're going to tell you that online streaming platforms don't pay them enough, and also that it's hard for them to be discovered on these streaming platforms. And this is what the legislation that we passed is intended for. It's to help local Canadian artists both get better pay and also get discovered on these streaming platforms.
So some of the political goings-on in your nation's capital. After today, there will be a shortened day of politics in Ottawa tomorrow, and then all the MPs will head back to their ridings for a week. It will be the Thanksgiving break. They don't just get a long weekend. Of course, it's an entire week. Lots of leftovers. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back
on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
and have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. 2 hours of discussion and debate on some of the big issues of the day. Today's topics: heating and eating. Heating and eating. The weather is turning cooler, and there's a big holiday coming up, of course. Thanksgiving long weekend just around the corner. So we thought today, let's talk about heating and eating. So on heating, the government really wants you to buy a heat pump. Not just the federal government, but also many provincial governments. They want you to make the switch and buy a heat pump. See, it's good for your wallet, lower utility bills, and it's good for the environment. Using a heat pump much more environmentally friendly than using natural gas and using furnace oil to heat your home. So to that end, of course, lots of money on the table in the form of rebates. I mean, thousands and thousands of dollars in rebates. And I have to tell you, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking the incentives are so generous, you can't help but think about it. I don't have one now. I don't have a heat pump. But my gosh, the rebates where I live in Quebec, they're upwards of $7,000. So I have to say I'm giving it some consideration. Now, look, I don't know much about heat pumps. In fact, I know very little about heat pumps. My father-in-law has 2 of them at his place, lives in Charlottetown. He likes them, says they're great. He has no regrets. David's parents, as mentioned, bought a heat pump recently and had a heat pump installed.
Yes, they did.
No complaints so far.
No, they love it.
It hasn't been winter yet, but no complaints so far. So today, tell us about heat pumps. Have you bought one? Do you like it? How much was it? Start to finish, how much was the job? Okay, buy the unit or units, get them installed, and then what kind of rebate did you get from the government? How long did it take to get the job done? Did you have to wait a long time for the rebate? I'd be curious about that. What was the turnaround on that? What is the heat pump like in the winter? That's always a thing, right? What it's like in the winter. People always bring that up. When does it become inefficient? When does it become inoperative? What do you do if the power goes out? What do you use as a backup when you can't use it? All this stuff. Are you someone who looked into getting a heat pump installed but decided, you know what, it's not for me, I'm going to pass? So we want to know the good, the bad, the ugly about heat pumps. Help us out, will you? Give us the crash course. Heat pumps. Heat pumps. What should a potential buyer know about heat pumps before they go heat pump shopping? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. On eating, heating and eating, right? Eating. The Thanksgiving weekend is almost here. Time for giving thanks, counting our blessings, and a time to eat, and eat some more. But food production right now in this country is actually somewhat political. Because in Canada, we have something called supply management. Okay, so for the uninitiated, what that means is that dairy products and poultry products, like chickens and hens and turkeys and eggs, the production of those food items is done under what's known as supply management. Marketing boards determine the production and the price based on the cost of production, based on the cost of producing milk and chickens and eggs and turkeys. And this country imposes very high tariffs to keep imports of these food items out of this country. Now, the proponents, mainly agriculture organizations representing these farmers, claim that this system has many benefits. They say it prevents overproduction. They say it prevents shortages. It gives you price stability. There are no wild fluctuations in the price you pay at the grocery store, and it provides a stable income for our farmers. The critics of the system, and there are, believe me, many of those, say it costs us a lot of money because we all pay more for all of these food items. Milk and butter and eggs and chicken and turkeys prices are higher than they should be, and much higher than they are compared to the United States, for example, and they advocate for an end to this system and more competition in the agricultural sector. They say you should be able to go to the grocery store and you should have a choice. And if you want to buy American milk, you should be able to buy American milk and American butter and an American Thanksgiving turkey. One estimate suggests that Canadians are paying anywhere between $400 a year and $500 a year because of higher prices that come with supply management, and that is enough to force almost 200,000 people into poverty in this country. This is the system that the Bloc Québécois wants to protect right now in exchange for propping up the Liberals. Our question for you, with so many people struggling with high prices for food right now, is it time to scrap this system? And should you be able to go to a local grocery store and buy an American turkey for Thanksgiving, or buy American milk or American butter or a dozen American eggs? You might pay less. And I'm just curious if you've done food shopping in the United States recently, gone grocery shopping in the United States. Love to hear from you. Just how much cheaper are these food items in the United States compared to Canada? Even with the exchange rate, is it still a bargain? Heating and eating. We want a crash course on heat pumps. What do we need to know? And should we open the Canadian market to cheaper foreign imports of food items like turkeys? 1-833-668-2577. Richard in Truro, Nova Scotia,
Yes.
up first today. Hello there, Richard. How are you?
Fine, thanks. And you?
I'm just great. Thank you, sir.
Personally, I think heat pumps are a scam.
A scam. Okay, what makes them a scam?
Well, they have an auxiliary electric heater inside the heat pump. It's called you can Google it right there. Auxiliary heater, an electric heater. Now, this heat pump is supposed to take heat out of the air, but when it can't take any heat out of the air, it turns on this electric heater, which you could have the electric heater. You could buy it at any store, an electric heater, and put it in your house. And
of course, I have a few of those already. A little space heater, you mean, right? Yeah.
They put, if heat pumps work, why do they put this auxiliary heater inside, so that'll give you the illusion that, wow, this thing is really working good, but it's a hidden electric heater, and they don't tell you about it. And all the scientists, every scientist I've ever seen, say that there is no heat in air that in our winters. There's no heat in it. After it goes down.
Okay. So you think it's a scam? So you wouldn't buy one?
No, I would not. Like the technology, and the theory, it'll work like in October or in November. Now I have neighbors that have heat pumps. And I look out and I see their heat pumps at the side of their house, and then I look up at the roof and I see their furnace on all winter. I laugh.
All winter, okay.
I'm laughing because why is your furnace? Why is there steam coming out of your chimney? Like if the heat pump.
All right. So heat pumps are not for you then.
The technology is right, but it doesn't work at low temperatures.
Okay, well, we're gonna put that to the test today because they're very popular. I live in a place that gets pretty harsh Canadian winters. I see heat pumps all over the place. I don't know how often they're inoperative in the winter. That's one of the things I want to get at today. Our crash course in heat pumps. Talking about food prices today as well, higher than they should be because of supply management. Time to scrap that system. What do you think? 1-833-668-2577. Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Heating and eating. Tell us everything you know about heat pumps. We want the crash course in heat pumps. And supply management in agriculture, it means we pay more for things like turkeys for Thanksgiving, milk, butter, eggs. Should we get rid of this system? It's been around since the 1960s. What do you think? 1-833-668-2577. Ian in Kitchener. Thanks for calling, Ian. Hi there.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, Ian. Thank you.
Good. Your first caller is what drives me crazy. When get some proper research, please, because my home in Kitchener is completely off the grid. I actually called utilities and said you can get rid of the gas meter about a year and a bit ago, and
wow.
So I've been involved with renewables for 20 years, and I have a 10K solar array. I have on-demand electric hot water, and I just put a heat pump in literally a year ago, August. And
okay, and how's it going?
Okay, so the auxiliary heating that this guy's talking about, everything's going to have a backup, whether it's electric or even, for that matter, gas. Because when you hit below minus 25, that's kind of the point where those heat pumps will struggle in terms of doing what it does. Here's the thing: you're lucky, at least in Ontario, to actually have that temperature for like 2 weeks in February. With everything the way it's changing with our climates, you're not going to be hitting that very often. And honestly, in terms of cost-wise, it's still a huge savings because you're talking about something that is not 97, 98% efficient. It's more like 200% efficient the way it works. I also got the government grant of $5,600.
$5,600, okay.
Yeah, I got that for insulating my attic. I'm in a 100-year-old house. And then I also got a $13,000 loan, which is 10 years, no interest, which is, if you get, it's free money, really. You got to pay it back, but no interest. The other thing I always tell people, too, is
just before we move, just let me jump in there. The $13,000 interest-free loan, what was that for?
That was for the heat pump.
That was for the heat pump. Okay.
Yeah. And so, and I always tell people, like, when you're shopping around for the heat pump, you want to make sure you go with a reputable company. Also see, if you can get one of those deferrals of 9 months to a year deferral in payments, because I ended up getting the check in December, and I didn't have to pay until May, and I put that money actually into a bank stock, which just went up and paid me a nice dividend, and then I paid off my loan. So
very interesting. Okay, all right.
Right.
So if I could just interrupt again, I'm very curious.
Sorry,
so the job itself to install the heat pump, how much did that cost? Like with the unit and the installation, how much?
I'd have to look at that part of it again, to be honest.
Okay. Can you give me a ballpark? Like, was it?
Yeah, like the
10 grand? Was it more than 10 grand? Less than 10 grand?
The unit itself is usually around 18 to start, but then you get your rebates and then you get your interest-free loans. So I would say it was, installed, it was around 18 to 19 grand. And yeah, and with everything. And then with the rebates and everything else, it worked out to about 13, somewhere around that area.
And no regrets.
No. Oh, God, no. I have multiple friends with them, and it's interesting because a lot of them have noticed that going from a gas furnace to the heat pump, they actually said it's more comfortable because the humidity is controlled better. And there's something about the air, just the quality. It's not so dry. It's a little more balanced. So on everything,
All right, Ian. Very informative. Thank you.
Thanks. All right,
Great to hear from you. Yeah, I really appreciate the call. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Heat pumps, supply managed Thanksgiving turkeys. Talking about both of those today. Heating and eating. George, I believe it is. Yeah, in Alberta. There we go. George. Hi there, George.
Hi, how are you today?
Good, George. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I'd like to say I'm delighted. I just only found you guys 2 days ago because our talk radio in Alberta's got so bad it's not worth listening to. But anyways, I got a small cow operation, and so nobody helps me. When things go south. Right now, the price of cattle is through the roof, but I can't do nothing about that. But these supply management guys, they're basically a mafia. And for some reason, the politicians, especially in Quebec, are afraid of them. And every time there's a little bump in this, a bump in that, they just jack the price up and there's no go. So I say it's time for them to go free market all the way, baby.
Right. So you would be open to opening up our market for things like dairy, cheese, butter, yogurt, ice cream, eggs, all that stuff. Go to the store, buy, I don't know, Mexican eggs. You're okay with that?
Absolutely. Because my beef is sold on the open market, and I have to compete with anybody. And when you compete and you raise a good product like Alberta beef is the best in the world, so we have no trouble selling our stuff. These guys don't have to innovate, don't have to do whatever it takes. Because to pay for my small farm, I had to work. My wife had to work, and I pipelined for years and years and years away from my home and left her and the kids feeding the cows in the wintertime. It was a tough go, but we have managed to get by. And we don't get no help from anybody like these guys do.
Okay. These guys, the supply management guys, say this protects our industry. This protects the Canadian farm. Make sure the farmer can make a living. What do you say to that?
Well, who's protecting me? Nobody. I have to do everything on my own. And the other thing is, only multimillionaires can afford to buy quotas. Like right here in Alberta, all the dairy farms, about 90% of them, are owned by Dutchmen, people who come right from Holland. They sold their 5 acres in Holland for a fortune, come here, bought a quota off somebody who wanted to retire with a fortune because the quotas are worth millions of dollars. They're the only people that could afford it. And they drove the price of land up, and they did everything, and they could because they knew they were getting a guaranteed income, and they were never going to go broke. And you should see the mansions these guys live in, the dairy barns they live in. There's no competition, so they can just spend, and they know they're going to make money.
All right. Okay, so time to get rid of supply management, George says. Thank you, George, for calling. Good to hear from you. Keep listening, my friend. Okay, thank you. Daryl in Halifax. Hi, Daryl.
Hello.
Hi, Daryl.
Hi. Hi, Rob.
What do you want to talk about, Daryl?
about heat pumps.
Yes.
I've been listening to the show and to a number of shows a number of times, and I think one of the biggest problems is that most people don't even understand what they're talking about to start with. So basically, right now on the market, when people talk about heat pumps, the majority of people think of ductless splits. These are the little things that go on your wall with a condensing unit on the outside of the building. And this is designed as a spot heater to help the house, certainly not to heat the entire house. Then after that, you get into the bigger ones that are air-to-air ducted. You have air-to-water, which can provide in-floor heat, an actual outside heat pump that can do air-to-water. And then you've got geothermal, which are water source heat pumps that can supply the whole house. So if you start talking about heat pumps, you have to kind of put them in the
do you have one, sir?
Yes,
Daryl?
I've had one since 1992. Yeah.
Okay. Do you mind hanging on the line and I ask you a few questions about it?
Not at all, sir.
Take about 3 or 4 minutes. You have that time?
I will be here, sir.
All right. You listen to the news, I'll listen to the news, and we'll continue our conversation here on Talkback on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Heating and eating, the theme for the day on Talkback. On heating, there's certainly a bite in the air in the mornings these days. We want to know everything you know about heat pumps. We want the 4-on-1 on heat pumps. Did you buy one? How's it going? How much was it? What kind of rebate did you get from the government? What's it like in the winter? All of this stuff. Did you inquire about a heat pump but said, it's not for me? On eating, certainly, Thanksgiving is coming up. And because we have supply management in Canada for things like turkeys, we pay more in this country for food items like turkeys, chicken, eggs, butter, milk than they do in the United States. Those farmers are protected from imports from the United States. Is it time to get rid of a system like that? Should you be able to go to a grocery store and say, buy American turkeys and chickens and milk and eggs? We are here to learn from you. 1-833-668-2577. We were speaking with Daryl, longtime owner of a heat pump. Would you say 1992?
Yes,
Daryl?
Yes,
1992. Wow. So an early adopter, I guess you could say. So tell us what you know about heat pumps.
Well, I also designed and installed heat pump systems for houses for over 20 years. I've been retired for 5, so I just want to let you know that.
Okay, sure.
There are so many problems with heat pumps because of poor installations in heating systems that were not designed to have heat pumps put on them, i.e. an air-to-air put on an oil furnace system if the ductwork is too small. I could go on forever on the different things, but basically what I want to get across to the readers or to your listeners is get a reputable company to come in, sit down, assess what you are looking to do with your building, not what they want to sell you. What do you want to do with your building and how you're going to live in your building, and then have them price something accordingly to suit your needs.
Okay. So I see some houses around here. Some of them have one, some of them have two. Why is that?
If you're talking about ductless splits, if you're talking about the small condensing units, you would have, you could have, virtually you could have 10, 15 of them in a house. If you had enough money and you wanted to do it, you could have one for every room. That would be kind of financially not a smart move to do, but that could be done. Now, if you're talking about the big condensing units for ductwork, for added on to air handlers, so with the big condensing units on the outside, it's matched to an air handler, or what people may know as a furnace, but it's got a heat coil, transfer coil in it, and an electric element in it. And that is what is matched with the heat pump outside. And so basically, When it's designed and installed properly, it will do a balance point, a thermal balance point of X. They will design it for a certain heat load of your house, and then after that, your electric heaters will kick in and kick out to auxiliary, to augment the heat pump. The heat pump will continue to run. There's still heat in the air. I don't know why people doesn't think that there's no heat in the air, because today it's minus 20, tomorrow it's minus 25. There's less heat in the air, but there's still heat there. So,
okay. So generally speaking, how do they perform in the winter?
They perform extremely well if they're installed properly and you get the right system for the right application. If you're going to try and tow a great big trailer with an F-150 versus an F-350, you'll see the difference. But they have to be sized accordingly. You can't have them oversized, because when they go into air conditioning, they condense the water inside the house rather than air conditioning it. And therefore, what happens is before they get the water out, it condenses inside. So you end up with a 1970s bungalow basement where it's all moisture inside the house. So that's what happens if it's too big. So again, you have to have people that know what they're doing to come in and take a look at it. And it's not one size fits all. And I know people will say, oh, well, I did this and I did this and I bought it on the internet and it works like a charm. Good luck to all those people. I'm just saying, I've been down that road before, and we've seen an awful lot of things that just don't work.
All right. Look, Daryl, you're very informative, very patient. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Rob. You have a great day, sir.
Yeah, you too. Yeah, isn't that great? Cheryl, from Daryl to Cheryl in Halifax. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I wouldn't own one personally for my house.
Okay.
I just wouldn't.
Why is that?
Well, I have 6-zone hot water baseboard oil, minimal overhead. I get a cleaning 1 to 1.5 years because I keep my heat around 10 degrees in the wintertime. And I don't like electric heat. It just doesn't resonate with me. Like, I find it very dry.
Okay.
And there's nothing to stop we're on Nova Scotia Power. They have a monopoly. There's nothing to stop them from constantly increasing the electricity rates, whereas oil can fluctuate on the market, and I have a little bit more control over when I order it and how much I pay.
Okay. Have you looked into it at all? At
I did, and they
You
basically
did?
said I would need a ducted unit. Mini splits would not work. It's 3 levels. So that would be 3 minimum heat pumps, 3 to clean, 3 to clean the filters on, 3 to replace. It's just not worth it to me for my style home and how I like to run my heat.
Okay. Did you get a quote?
Yeah, I did get a quote from a gentleman. He's like,
do you mind how much? How much?
30 to 40,000 to put the ducted in.
Yes. Wow.
Because my original, my ducting for the, is not going to work. It has to be all replaced. And then you have to pay to get the oil tank removed if you're, and et cetera.
Right. Now, the government says, look, you switch. I know it's a big upfront cost, 30 to 40,000. The government says in the long run, you'll save money. You'll have lower utility bills. What do you say to that?
Well, are they guaranteeing that, Nova Scotia Power is never going to raise their rates when they're currently being raised? And I've noticed.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet against that. But
yeah, people were saying that they thought it would be economical, and they're actually paying more in some cases.
Really? Okay. All right,
Yeah.
Cheryl. Thank you. Cheryl looked into it, not for her. Heating and eating, the theme for the day. Give us a call. Let's talk back. 1-833-668-2577. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Up next on Talkback, Grant in Listowel. Hi, Grant.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah, great to hear from you.
Listen to you all the time. Having said that, I am so frustrated with these people who are whining and complaining about the cost of food.
Okay.
One example is the chap that phoned in and said he's had no backing. Started out with a little farm and he worked off the farm, all that. But thank God to our government and government support that we have the food that we have here in Canada. In reality, yes, if quotas come in and the dairy went for it, the feathers went for it, the hog and beef industry did not.
That's right. Yeah.
So that was their option back in the day.
It was, okay.
And they didn't want it. Now, the ones that are in the dairy and in the feathers, to bring in from the States, it's a major supply of food for our country. It's stabilized, and it's very inexpensive. Yes, the farmers.
But it's more expensive. It's more expensive than it should be because you have a protected market, though. That's the case that is made.
Well,
prices in
they
Canada
try to make that case.
Right? Prices in Canada for milk, butter, eggs, chicken, turkeys, they're higher in Canada because of the protections and because of the quota system.
It has a lot to do with our seasons in reality. You go down in the mid-states and they don't get the low temperatures, etc. Like in Iowa. Iowa is the biggest producer of hogs in North America. And they don't have to put up buildings to protect their hogs from the cold and the weather, etc.
Right.
Just for an example.
Okay. Yeah, because supply management, the marketing board says supply management is based on the cost of production. You're saying the cost of production is higher in Canada. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that, but a lot of people are, and I won't disagree with that. But having said that, we have consistency. Consistency. When have we ever went for 2 or 3 years that you couldn't go to the grocery store and get dairy products or fowl? That there was such a shortage due to bird flu or whatever, a devastation in the industry. Not in my history.
Well, I don't know. If I went to an American grocery store, I mean, is there really a shortage of chicken in American grocery stores or milk in American grocery stores or eggs in American?
Overhead costs.
Right. Okay. All right.
It's they mass produce. Our farmers are the biggest gamblers in the world. They gamble on the weather, and they gamble on the market, and if they don't have any backup, we wouldn't have any farmers. We wouldn't produce our own food, and that's the most important product that a country needs to make sure that they can produce their own food to a large degree.
I got you, Grant. Okay. In defense of supply management, Grant in Listowel. Let's go to Kyle, also in Listowel today. Kyle, hi there.
Hello. All right. So I have a heat pump in my house. I was lucky because my dad is just retired actually last year in mechanical and engineering for industrial HVAC and stuff. So he helped me out, with what heat pumps to put in my house. So I have one condenser that is on a 4-head system. So I got a wartime home, and I got 4 zones in my wartime home. So it's nice because 1, you don't hear it even kick on. 2, my electrical bill has not changed. Actually, it's gone down by $10 to $15 a month versus when I used the baseboard heating. It was astronomical. And then ever since I put these heat pumps in, way more efficient. And the other thing is so my girlfriend likes, in her office, she likes it a little cooler than what I like. So she'll have it at 19, 20 degrees. I might have in my living room watching the hockey game. I might have it at 22, 23 degrees. So I have that, and we still have a gas fireplace just in case, let's say the power does go off. We have an extra source of heating and stuff. But all I got to say is just stay on top of it. You know, the filter does have to be changed once or cleaned once a month there. Just take a quick vacuum to where the filters are and just get somebody to come in, and you could do it yourself, but just take a garden hose, you know, at the lowest pressure setting because you don't want to damage those fins, and clean it up once a year. And you know what? It's the easiest thing to maintain. And if I was going to buy a house or build a house, I'm not hesitant once to even put a heat pump in that house if I wanted to. So that's
have you been through a winter with it?
Yeah, I have. This is my third winter going through it. I got stuck in a snowstorm when Litchfield shut down for 4 days. And, you know, the lowest I have, now mine is mine is rated for -20. We've had, I think, lowest was like -23, 24. And you know what? I don't even notice it. I mean, and if I do, it's probably I just put an extra sweater on. But they're very efficient. I mean, you just have to, like I think one guy said, just make sure, you know, you're getting it for the proper climate that you're in. In Litchfield, it doesn't get down to -40, so I don't need that extra coverage there. But I do have it at rated for -20. It loses a little bit of efficiency once you hit that, but again, not noticeable. Super efficient. I didn't know what to expect when I first had them. Even in the summertime with the heat waves we get, and it kicks onto the air conditioning side, does a really fabulous job. I have the house set at, when I leave, probably like 12 or 13 degrees, like the lowest setting, you can put it at like 10 degrees or whatever. I have it at, 13, 14. We go away for a few days. We come back. We cook them up to 21. And, they kick on high for about 15, 20 minutes just to warm the whole house up. And then again, it goes on to the lowest economical setting that I have it set at. So I have no issues with it whatsoever. But like I said, my dad's an engineer in mechanical, so I was pretty lucky for him to point me to the right direction.
He helped you out. That's good. That's good. Yep. All right, Kyle. Yeah, great experience. Thank you for sharing, sir. Thank you. Be right back. Talk back. Hour number 1 here on a Thursday. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
and have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Heating and eating, the themes for the day. Matt in Alberta. Thanks for calling. Matt, hi there.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, Matt. Thanks for calling.
Just the calling about the quota system. It does have its flaws in certain areas, but there is a huge, I think, that covers the quality of what you're getting. There is no doubt flaws in it, but one of the other huge costs that people don't realize, I think, is the transportation of the goods to the feed to the farm and the trucking from the farm and the process to the grocery store. Up in the poultry industry, I have a small trucking company. I haul livestock. Just alone last year, my one truck, I paid almost $18,000 in carbon tax.
Wow!
And I'm one truck.
Right.
So figure all the trucks that bring the feed in to the farmers, the fertilizer in to the farmers. All those trucks are $18,000 to $20,000 a year, probably in carbon tax. On top of that, so all that cost has to get passed down to somewhere. Our rates go up. All this stuff goes up, and it doesn't. And that's why your food is more money. That is in the end game. That's where it happens.
Okay, so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe instead of complaining about supply management driving up food costs, maybe a better target is the carbon tax.
Carbon tax is a huge thing, and to get rid of supply management in Canada, there's so many farmers, which it was never supposed to be that you could borrow money against quota to grow your farm or whatever. But there's so many farmers that have leveraged money on quota to expand and grow their farms with all these banks, like millions and billions of dollars. So they throw all that out. Who pays the value and the equity? Because the banks classify that as equity.
There was once an estimate done. Let's say we open it all up to global competition, okay, and there's no more quota system, no more supply management goes away in Canada. What about the value of all that quota?
Well, that's it. I mean,
$35 billion, something like that. Would you pay off Canadian farmers to the tune of 16,000 of them, $35 billion?
And that's right. I mean, the milk board and the turkey board have systems that for new farmers to get into, that it works.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
It's
Okay.
hard work,
Interesting remarks. We got to go. They're going to cut us off, both of us. Hour number 2 coming up next. Talkback Hour, Heating or Eating on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Heating and eating is the theme for today's Talkback. On heating, we're interested in knowing more about heat pumps, getting the answers to the FAQs on heat pumps. Did you buy one? How's it going? How much was it? What kind of rebate did you get from the government? What's it like in the winter? Did you look at getting one but took a pass? And on eating, supply management in Canada, very political right now. We pay higher prices for things like milk, butter, eggs, chicken, and Thanksgiving turkeys. We pay more for all of that stuff in Canada than they do, for example, in the United States. Because of supply management, our Canadian farmers are protected from imports in the United States. There have been calls, lots of them, in the past that we should get rid of this system that's been around since the 1960s. And Canadians should be able to buy imported milk, eggs, cheese, poultry, say from the United States or Mexico. And Canadians would save money. It's been argued that this system costs Canadians, because of higher prices, between $400, $500 a year. What do you think? 1-833-668-2577. Stephen in Halifax on the line. Thank you for calling, Stephen. Thank you for hanging in there. Hi there.
No worries. How you doing, Rob? First-time caller, long-time listener.
Appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much.
The reason I'm calling is that I was listening to one of the ladies talking about not converting over, and she doesn't want the heat pump stuff because of Nova Scotia Power down here having a monopoly, and they're kind of crooked because our government rubber stamps every pay increase they want. My father was a burner mechanic. I'm going to give you a quick little history. My father was a burner mechanic. My brother's a burner mechanic, furnaces. I'm a diesel marine engineer, so I work with fuel. And I was a little hesitant about doing heat pumps as well. And when we had a little 2-bedroom bungalow here in Halifax, and we were paying a monthly payment of on a payment plan with an oil company, $250 a month, 12 months out of the year, to have them top up our oil tank and not worry about do our furnace and all of that stuff.
Okay.
So after we did that, we built a new house, and we built a house that is a 5-bedroom house with an in-law suite in the basement, 5 bathrooms, and we went heat pump, and the built-in heat pump. It cost us an extra $40,000 to do that.
Wow.
And when we did that, our oil bill was non-existent because we no longer have an oil tank or an oil furnace. And our monthly payment dropped from $250 a month down to $50 a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's rated for -29, so we've never lost heat. When we do lose power, of course, I run a generator in case we lose power because I know somebody's going to call in and say, what happens when you lose power? Well, majority of us here in Nova
I have that on my list of questions. What happens when the power goes out? I mean, you get hit by Fiona or something like Fiona happens. What do you do if Fiona happens?
Hurricanes. Yeah. Most of us have generators in our homes now.
Sure.
So after we did that, this summer, we went for the government rebate thing, and we put solar panels on our house.
Okay.
And we got our first bill just last week for 3 months for our electricity. And you won't believe what we're paying for this great big huge home. Our bill for 3 months was $40. And
all in taxes, delivery, all that stuff. Yeah.
That's running a washer and dryer every day, the whole thing.
Wow.
So we went from $250 a month to $90, basically, you might as well say, to heat our 5-bedroom house, 4-bathroom with an in-law suite.
Right, and your old house was a 2-bedroom bungalow.
Our old house was a 2-bedroom bungalow, unfinished basement. And it was insulated, sided, because when we bought the place, we had it re-insulated and sided the house and everything, and new windows, and we still pay $250 a month on a payment plan through our Superline Fuels, it was called. And in the spring, they would give us a credit on what oil we didn't burn or what money we paid into it every year.
Okay.
So I understand the lady that said she's hesitant about doing it into an older home because we looked at putting a heat pump system. It's ducted, mind you. It's not one of the ones that mount on the wall. It's a ducted system. And I can understand not wanting to do it to an older home because it is $40,000-$50,000 to do that, because she is correct. You do have to redo ducting and all of that stuff. But when you're building a new home, I seriously recommend going to a ducted heat pump system. I'm not a fan of the wall mount unit ones. I have one at our little cottage, our small little cottage. It works, but in the fall when we're down there, we still turn on we still light up the wood stove to take the chill off, and then the heat pump maintains that.
Okay. Look, very informative.
For a full-size home, yeah, that's the way to go.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate the call, sir. And you're listening.
All right. Well,
Thank
you have
so
a great
much.
day.
Well, you too. Let's go to Bill in Halifax. We will. We'll be just fine here. Hi, Bill. Hello, Bill. Are you with me? Oh, lost Bill. Okay. Well, why don't we stop here anyway? Look, the federal government really wants you to buy a heat pump, okay? They'd love it if you bought a heat pump. I heard they're being so generous these days, they want to get you to buy a heat pump so bad. Stephen Guilbeault will deliver it in person in his orange jumpsuit, okay? That's how much they want to buy. They want you to buy a heat pump because they say you'll save money and you'll save the planet at the same time. So it's a win-win. And the federal government, along with provincial governments, they're offering big rebates if people switch to heat pumps. So if you are among the people who have done that, I would love to know your experience. When we come back, that's one of our topics today. We've also been discussing agriculture, supply management in agriculture. Means you pay more for that Thanksgiving turkey. You'd be hard-pressed to find a politician who doesn't support supply management in agriculture, although all kinds of other experts in the agri-economy say it has served its purpose and it's time to get rid of it. What would you say? 1-833-668-2577. This is Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Heating and eating, heat pumps, food prices. That's what we're talking about today on the Talkback. 1-833-668-2577. 3 lines there available. The wait won't be too long. Ken in Alberta. Thank you for calling, Ken. Hi there.
Hi. In regards to heat pumps,
yes.
From all my experience, I don't think that they are the answer for staying warm in Canada.
Okay, and why is that? Why do you say that, sir?
Well, I've lived in northwestern New Brunswick, and I'm currently in Alberta, and in northwestern New Brunswick, all kinds of people do have them. My mother, she's a senior citizen. She still needs to maintain a wood stove and an oil furnace to be able to keep the house warm because of how often they freeze up on her. I'm not sure if it's just the unit. I don't know a whole lot about the specific units myself. And, well, I'm in Alberta. And, well, and the average temperature seems to be somewhere around minus 25 from everything I've heard as to when people are having issues with them freezing up. I've worked outside my entire life, and the East Coast at minus 25 is very cold with the humidity and stuff. I've worked in minus 55 in northern Alberta, and I'd rather work in that. Again, in Alberta, when we hit minus 55, there's no way they're going to work.
No, okay.
So you're going to have to have something on top of that.
Sure. So you're worried about the winter performance then? That's
yes.
You would never buy one, is what you're saying?
Nope, I never would.
Never would. Okay, I thank you for your call, Ken. Yeah, 1-833-668-2577. Stephen Guilbeault is going to be so disappointed in Ken. Look, the government, there's big money on the line. The federal government, it has a program that aims to convince people to switch specifically from oil burning furnaces to heat pumps. That's a big thing in Atlantic Canada. I'm sure you all remember in Atlantic Canada, they started paying a carbon tax and people weren't happy, and support for the Liberals dropped like a stone. And so the Liberals gave Atlantic Canadians the infamous carbon tax carve-out. 3 years, no carbon tax on heating oil. Please keep voting for us. And as part of that whole slimy scheme, they came up with this program called the OPA program. Oil to Heat Pump Affordability Program. Oil to Heat Pump Affordability Program, OPHA. So this is how that works. To qualify, you have to own your home, have a household income at or below the provincial after-tax median level, and purchase at least 1,000 liters of heating oil in a 12-month period. It's not applicable if you live in an apartment building or a multi-unit building. So if that's you, you could have qualified for a grant of up to $10,000 toward the cost of a qualified heat pump. And that program started, about a year ago in October of 2023, and it's supposed to run until March of 2027. And then the Trudeau Liberals, they even sweetened the offer, and they made enhancements to the program to kind of say, pretty, please, Atlantic Canadians, please, pretty, please, keep voting Liberal and get yourself a heat pump. So what they did was they convinced provincial governments in Nova Scotia, PEI, Newfoundland, to cough up some of their own money. And the provincial governments there agreed. And so in those provinces, there is now a federal grant of up to $15,000. And then there are provincial grants on top of that. And then the federal government will even give you a one-time bonus payment of $250. Like I said, I mean, they really want people to buy heat pumps. I mean, so much so, they're practically willing to pay for the whole thing. I mean, $15,000 from the feds. And then whatever provincial grant is available. And then, yeah, here's $250 for your trouble, I guess, for filling out the paperwork. The PBO, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, said if the uptake trend continued for 5 years with this program, the cost to the taxpayers of Canada, in all of Canada, not just in Atlantic Canada, but it would be $800 million over 5 years. There are about 244,000 households across Canada that should meet the qualifications for the program because heating oil is used by Canadians in other provinces. It just happens to be a lot more common in Atlantic Canada than anywhere else in the country. But the PBO said if every household that is qualified to sign up for it, the total bill, I mean, not everybody's going to sign up for it, like the last caller. Canada's not signing up for it. But if everyone signed up for it, to switch every household to a heat pump, $2.7 billion. Over from heating oil to heat pumps, $2.7 billion. Yeah, big money. But they say it's worth it. You'll save money, and we'll all save the planet. So, what do you think? Have you done it? Did you get yourself a heat pump? And how's that working out for you? 1-833-668-2577. Back with more of your calls on Talkback. You're on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Been talking about supply management in agriculture. We've been talking about heat pumps, installing heat pumps, getting all kinds of information on that today. Very useful. Alan in Elora, Ontario. Thanks for calling, Alan. Hi there.
You.
Hi,
Can
Alan.
you hear me?
I hear you just fine, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. I just want to approach the topic of supply management.
Yes.
I'm in an agricultural area, and I have no setup in supply management. Looking at it from two sides, number one, the consumer, through the system, gets farm to plate fresh food. There's an effort to manage the supply and the demand. It might cost a little bit more, but we know that we're not going to get some stale dated food because it's cheaper. Without supply management, I think we run a risk of not having the healthy, fresh food. From a farmer's point of view, supply management allows him to budget and plan for the future. He knows that he's got the contract next year, and he's paid for that. He's paid for that privilege, and he can invest in his farm. There's a lot of money that goes into producing food. A lot of people that are urban don't realize the investment that these guys are making, and they can make it because they are guaranteed an income. That's my point.
Yeah. Well, let's look at the agricultural sectors that are not under supply management. I'm not lacking for fresh beef. I'm not lacking for fresh pork, for example.
Yeah.
Right? Running a beef farm is an expensive enterprise. Or running a hog farm, I'm sure, is an expensive enterprise as well, right?
And all of those families are living paycheck to paycheck, and they watch the price of pork bottom out, and some of them lose their farms. That is my background. We were turnip and pig farmers, and that's not a game that you want to get into when you can have a secure job at McDonald's.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's terrible on the pork side of things right now. There's a terrible glut of pork, right? So this is one of the things that the defenders of supply management say, because we're controlling this, the supply through the quota system. We don't have shortages, but nor do we have overproduction. But from time to time, there are these videos of farmers who are, they're pouring milk down the drain, right? What happened to that guy who poured the milk down the drain?
Yeah, and far better to pour it down the drain than to feed it to somebody still dated. Travel through the northern part of Arkansas and watch the chicken industry there controlled by one man, Mr. Tyson. And a farmer, if he doesn't grow the chickens for next to nothing, he doesn't get the contract, so he sits out a whole year. Mr. Tyson can afford his cigars, but the farmers, the buildings are dilapidated, they're not clean, and I feel really sorry for the entire industry. The profit goes to one man because he controls it all. That's my take on that.
All right. It's a very good take. Thank you, Alan, for calling. Yeah, really appreciate it. We will stop here. We'll pick things up right after the news. We can continue our discussion about supply management. Always very interesting and certainly very political right now. And Heat Pumps 101. If you want to weigh in on that, by all means, 1-833-668-2577. It's Talk Back on a Thursday. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
It's time to talk back
on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
and have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
So we've been talking about heating and eating. It is kind of chilly where I am. 9 degrees right now where I am. Woo. Heat pumps. I've been thinking about getting one, so I want to know everything you know about heat pumps. Did you buy one? How's it going? How much was it? What kind of rebates you get from the government? What's it like in the winter? Did you look at getting a heat pump and took a pass? Just a crash course in heat pumps. And on eating, supply management. Okay. It's been around since the 1960s in Canada. The very fate of the Trudeau government may depend on supply management. As a result of supply management in agriculture. We pay higher prices in Canada for things like turkeys, like Thanksgiving turkeys, chicken breast at the grocery store, a dozen eggs, a pound of butter, a quart of milk. We pay more for all of these food items than they do in other countries, like the United States, because our farmers are protected from imports from the United States. Should we get rid of supply management? Open up the entire agri-economy to international competition? You know, how comfortable would you be buying imported milk and eggs and poultry, say, from the United States or Mexico? You'd save money. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Lots of time left. Let's go to Rob in Calgary. Hi, Rob.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, Rob. How are you?
Not too bad.
That's great.
I could talk on both of them, but
well, go ahead.
For years. Yeah. But first is the heat pumps. My son bought a house south of Calgary. It came with a heat pump set up, very expensive, and he has taken it out because his house was never comfortable in Calgary, and he spent thousands of dollars through different companies trying to get it work. He's taken it out, put a furnace and air conditioner in now because it just doesn't work in our climate here. A friend of mine who lives in Fort Mac, that's what he does for a living, is furnaces, air conditioners, refrigeration, you name it. And he says, no, where we live in Calgary and up Fort Mac north, they don't work. But on the other hand, he has a vacation home in BC, in Summerland, and he put a heat pump in his place out there, and he says it works perfect. Great air conditioning, great heat. It's great. So my biggest thing is with the heat pumps, I don't think you can say they work all over Canada because we're a big country. What works one area won't work in the next. And I think that's the biggest thing people have to take a real close look at is where they live and do they work with their temperatures fluctuations from one to the other. And I think
fair enough. So the issue really with your son, it just couldn't. Was it weather related? Was it the way that he felt, that kind of thing, or what?
The house never felt comfortable. You were always with a sweater, coat on. You sat to watch TV. You had a blanket on in the winter, and in the summer, it wouldn't take the house down till it was comfortable. You know, it just didn't seem to work. And it wasn't that he didn't give it a try. He probably spent $20,000 playing around with that. At the end, he's got a furnace heat exchanger thing sitting in his garage. It's 3 months old. They took out because he said, I'm just fed up with it, and they put a furnace in. And he says they just couldn't make it work properly in his house, and it's a new house. It's not like an old house that's drafty. It's well insulated, the whole 9 yards.
All right. So you said you've been in farming?
Yes. Yeah, I farm. And I think with the farming, it's like a lot of things that people say, well, the price of eggs in U.S. is cheaper than the price of eggs in Canada. But I think there's a lot of things that you have to look at. You have to look at what taxes they pay on the land. Do they have a carbon tax? You know, all these things are built into the cost of, you know, I grew grain and raised cattle. You know, there's a lot of things that go into it that I talk to. We used to go down to the States and talk to the farmers down there and, oh, well, we don't do this, we don't pay this, you know, and it just isn't the cost, it's their input costs from one country to another, and you have to really look at the big picture. And I think that's the biggest thing. Do they subsidize in the States more than what we subsidize here, you know? So it's really a complex question to me.
I understand that.
Have to take a look at.
But I guess you know, are you know, the dairy farmers and the egg farmers and the poultry farmers, are they in a more, say, advantaged position than other parts of the agri-economy because they enjoy these protections? And are consumers in the end the ones who are paying the price for those protections through these higher prices?
Well, my mother-in-law dairied, and they dairied for years, and they had the quota system, and the quota really, you know, was a big thing. You buy the quota, cost you quite a bit to get it,
Oh, yeah.
And you can sell it, sometimes make money on them, and sometimes you lose money. But it gave them a steady income type of thing. They could budget and plan on that much. Me on grain, I had to look at the sky and say, am I going to make $1 or lose $1? I had no control over that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think
we've had this thing since the 60s now.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, is this a system that is, is it still working, do you think? Is it still worthwhile having this system here in the year 2024?
I think they would have to do, and not let the politicians, because they're only in it for their own pockets, as far as I'm concerned. But you have to get some agricultural, some farmer people that work in it, and give it a real thorough review. Honestly, not political driven, just on the straight economics. And I think that's where you'd have to start. It's not, any NDP or anybody saying, well, we should fix the price of this or we should do that. I think you have to look at the big picture and then make that decision by people that aren't driven by politics.
Very interesting. Okay, Rob, really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks for calling today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
I'm Rob Snow. That's Rob in Calgary. This is News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Heat pumps, the price of food. Topics for today, heating and eating. I hope you get a chance to enjoy a nice Thanksgiving meal with your family. Turkey prices, if turkey is your thing, they are actually supposed to be quite reasonable. This year for turkey prices. Not so for my favorite Thanksgiving main, which is beef tenderloin. I'm passing on that, David. I just can't make it happen. It's just too expensive. It is so expensive, beef tenderloin. I mean, it's a fine cut of meat, but my goodness, a little out of my price range. I'll be going for turkey this year. Turkey prices actually aren't too bad, despite supply management. Are you doing the turkey thing?
Yes, we will be. I'll be heading down to Ayr, Ontario, which is very close to our station there in Kitchener, 570 News. That's where my better half is from. Okay. And you know this, Rob, a previous career for my girlfriend's father, he was a professional chef. So when I say he makes a good turkey, I mean he makes a good turkey.
Yeah, that'll be good. See, I have it pretty good. It's just the two of us and the dog. And when it comes to Thanksgiving, my wife is vegetarian. So I get to eat all the turkey.
Well, turkey's pretty much a vegetable, isn't it? No?
No, it doesn't work like that. But I go in and I buy the smallest turkey. Because after a while, 3-4 days into it, you're like, holy smokes, like, how many turkey sandwiches can one man eat? Let me test here.
I can eat a lot of turkey sandwiches. I can help you out with that. If you need help, give me a call.
I'm taking an extra long weekend. I will not be here tomorrow. I have stuff to do. But so David will be steering the ship tomorrow. One of the things that you'll get to talk about, there's a brand new report out about the carbon tax.
Yes, there is. I've actually been perusing it a bit during the commercial breaks.
So this is from the Parliamentary Budget Officer. You remember he came out with a report about the carbon tax, and the Liberals were mad at him and said, you didn't take into account the cost of climate change. And so he said, okay, I'll go write a new report. And now that new report is out here on the 10th of October. And this is what it says. Okay. By the year 2030, 2031, 6 years from now, taking into consideration both fiscal and economic impacts, the Parliamentary Budget Officer estimates that the average household in each of the backstop provinces will see a net cost paying more in the federal fuel charge. That's what he calls the carbon tax, the federal fuel charge, and related goods and services tax, as well as receiving lower incomes due to the fuel charge compared to the Canada carbon rebate they receive and lower net taxes they pay due to lower incomes. Given that the fuel charge lowers employment and investment income, which makes up a larger share of total income for higher income households, their net cost is higher. So it's higher for higher income households. And then he has all kinds of charts and graphs and everything. Yeah, so it's just out now. I haven't had a chance to read it, but I'm sure it's going to be quite controversial and will spark all kinds of discussion and all kinds of debate. Yves Giroux is the parliamentary budget officer. Now, he also notes that the average household will see a net gain, receiving more from the Canada carbon rebate than the total amount they pay in the federal fuel charge directly and indirectly related to the goods and services tax, only if you look at the fiscal impact. But he says if you look at the economy as a whole, then the average household is not getting as much money back from the rebates than they pay in carbon tax and the GST. That's what I take away from it. I don't know if that's what you're taking away from it right now, Dave.
That is the big takeaway for certain. You know, it does blow another hole in this line. The Liberals say that we're all much better off because we have a carbon tax. And there's also some interesting stuff, and I'll get into it more on the show tomorrow because we're winding down for today. But there's some interesting stuff about the PBO took a look at how much reducing Canada's emissions will actually affect global climate change.
Oh, really? Okay. I haven't gotten to that part.
It's quite far down, but in the context of, you know, can you count mitigating climate change towards some of the financial benefit Canadians get from the carbon tax? And the parliamentary budget officer's assessment is no, you can't, because our emissions are frankly too small. We can't influence global climate change on our own.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Okay. All right. So that's something to watch for. Tomorrow when David is in, he'll be doing Talkback tomorrow. Carbon tax, always hot issue, the carbon tax. Brand new report just dropped from the parliamentary budget officer on the carbon tax. Can't wait to hear all the discussion and the debate back and forth about that. Who knows? Maybe it'll even trigger a carbon tax election. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback here on News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yeah, food production in the country has become really political these days in Canada, especially in the minority parliament that we have right now. You have the Bloc Québécois, right, with new leverage because of the end of the supply and confidence agreement between the New Democrats and the Liberals, and the Bloc, big defender of supply management. About half of all the dairy farms in the country are in the province of Quebec. They're a very powerful political force, the dairy farmers, and they want this system of production controls, price controls, off limits in any future free trade negotiations. Now, I would note, really none of the political parties are calling for an end to this system because, well, quite frankly, they don't want farmers parking tractors on Parliament Hill. Like, instead of the Freedom Convoy, Farmer Convoy. You know, they've had tractors up on Parliament Hill before. They don't want farmers up there, dumping milk onto Center Block. Or, maybe dumping stuff that's even worse onto Confederation Boulevard. All the politicians, they all want to be seen to be on the best friends of the farmers. And the farming organizations in the country, they're very politically active. And they do a lot of lobbying in the corridors of power in Ottawa. But because of this system, I mean, we do pay more. We pay upwards of $500 more every year for these items than we should if this system didn't exist. And let's face it, these days, I mean, it's tough enough to buy nutritious food. Record number of Canadians using food banks. Canadians could use a break. And so there's renewed interest in this now. People are really starting. This used to be kind of an obscure topic. Maybe it still is. But there are, I think, a growing number of people who say, hold on a second, we should really take a look at this because Canadians could use a break. And maybe scrapping supply management might be one way to give Canadians a break. I don't know. You know, right now you can't go to the grocery store and buy, say, cheap American milk or American cheese and chickens and turkeys and eggs because the tariffs on those products are so high, they're basically banned from the country. And every time that the government opens up the market even a little bit, we compensate these farmers. We send them money for lost market share. The big farming organizations, you know, Egg Farmers of Canada, Chicken Farmers of Canada, Dairy Farmers of Canada, they will all go to their graves saying this is good for Canada, it's good for Canadians, prevents shortages, prevents gluts or overproduction, provides price stability. You know, you go into the grocery store, butter's not way up in price one month and, you know, dirt cheap the next month. And it protects the Canadian farm. And a number of callers have raised that today. Make sure the farmer can make a living. And the prospect has been raised today. If we end this system, that would be the end of a lot of family farms in Canada. And yeah, you would pay a lot less, but you would be beholden, as one of our callers said, Alan, I believe, and Laura said, you would be beholden to the big American factory farms. You know, Mr. Tyson or Mr. Cargill. You know, and what about the nation's food security? Grant and Listowel brought that up. That's another issue that is quite often raised. Do we want the Canadian agricultural sector to be able to feed Canadians or not? To provide a reliable and affordable supply of food made by Canadians for Canadians? Or do you want to outsource your food production to other countries to save a few bucks on a quart of milk or a dozen eggs? Big issue. And it's not going anywhere because the free trade deal between Canada, the United States, and Mexico is all up for renegotiation. And the Americans are going to bring this up. It's guaranteed because they always bring it up. The latest breaking news coming up at the top of the hour. I'm Rob Snow. David's with you tomorrow. I'll be back on Tuesday.